This beautiful monster is AOC's AG346UCD, a stunning QD-OLED 1440p ultra-wide gaming monitor. It runs at 175Hz, and oh, did I mention that it's a QD-OLED panel? This is easily my new favourite gaming monitor, not necessarily because of the specs, although they definitely help, but how AOC have priced this thing. To say this is competitively priced is severely underselling this thing. But we'll get back to the price later. Now I want to show you around this thing. This is a 34-inch panel, at least 34 inches diagonally. It's the same height as a 27-inch 16:9 display, but has an extra half a display tacked onto the sides to make it a sort of letterboxed 21:9. Being so wide, the stand has to match it, although the foot is remarkably flat and as unintrusive as possible, despite its stability. The stand also has a fair bit of adjustment in both height, tilt, swivel, and even a tiny bit of rotation too. Not enough for portrait mode, but well, a little correction factor built in. At the back, you'll find the I/O, two HDMI 2.0 ports, one DisplayPort, and a 3-port USB 3 hub, with the yellow port for charging, and the other two ports being in a nice molding feature in the back left. You will struggle to plug anything into them blind, but also, I mean, it's when haven't you with monitors, it's fine. Also on the back you'll find the RGB lighting, which can be fully disabled if you're not into that, and the otherwise pretty nice design. It's a little angular, quite matte, which I like a lot, and overall I think looks pretty stylish for a bit of a monitor you'll never see again. The front is equally subtle, with just an Aegon logo at the front bar that's otherwise pretty thin as well. The panel is glossy, which for this thing is a major advantage, even if the edges attract fingerprints like that. The OSD is pretty familiar if you've used an AOC monitor recently, with gaming options like a crosshair, of course stuff like brightness and color controls, and of course the OLED care controls too. Much like the AG346UCD that I reviewed pretty recently and actually loved, video in the cards above, this has controls for pixel orbiting, which uses the extra pixels on the edges of the panel to shift the whole image around slightly to prevent burn-in, a pixel refresh mode, a bunch of protections like taskbar dimming, logo protection, boundary protection, and thermal protection, plus screensaver, which dims the display if there isn't any movement on the panel for a while. These, combined with my experience with QD-OLEDs being considerably better for burn-in performance than their WOLED counterparts, well, I would say that burn-in is not a problem you have to worry, or at least be particularly worried about here. Some sane caring, not leaving the screen on a static image like this for a long time, probably a good thing, but for the most part, it's pretty good. As for the panel itself, well, that feels awfully reminiscent of the Philips Evnia 8600 that I've been using as my primary display for at least a year now. Likely because Philips displays and AOC are owned by the same company, MMD, and there just aren't that many OLED panel manufacturers, especially QD-OLED ones, and considering the specs match, I'm reasonably confident in saying that these are the same panel. Since especially with an OLED there will be a lot less to tweak, really only like the burn-in protections, the experience of using them is functionally identical. I mean sure, the Evnia has Ambiglow, which is pretty cool, but the panel itself anyway is the same. Both are 1440p 175Hz QD OLEDs, and both are absolutely phenomenal. Naturally, with instant response times, FPS games play beautifully well. Technically not quite as smooth as the AG276QZD2 with its 240Hz refresh rate, but still incredibly well, and I'd argue the wider field of view can be a competitive advantage at times too, and certainly more immersive. Latency is spot on too, making for an exceptional experience. Of course, it isn't just good for FPS games. Basically any genre plays incredibly well here. I tried out a few, including racing games, where the ultrawide definitely plays into the immersion factor. Even playing with a keyboard, which is incredibly difficult by the way, I managed to enjoy myself quite a lot. This is just a brilliant display, and one that I rather like. Can you tell? One area where it isn't quite as good is the brightness. OLEDs suffer from limited brightness, as the harder you drive the LEDs, the quicker they fail, and this one is no different. I measured it at a consistent 230 nits at full brightness, which you would think was barely visible. And yet, much like the AG346UCD2, I have to underexpose my camera to actually capture this display properly, even under my bright studio lights. Here's how I would normally expose a shot for a monitor, especially one of this sort of brightness. See how blown out the display looks? It's way too bright, so I have to drop down the camera's brightness, and now look how dark the surrounding looks. This does not look like 230 nits to the eye. It looks bright and vibrant and rich. It's frankly stunning to look at and great for watching movies, especially with the sort of CinemaScope aspect ratio. Colors pop, and the data reflects that. 99% coverage of the DCI-P3 spectrum and 84% of Rec 2020, a first for me at over 83%. Oh, and it's very accurate too, with a delta E of just 0.44 in my testing, or 0.17 in AOC's testing. That comes in the calibration report that comes in the box. You don't get that with many displays. Okay, well you actually get it with like all AOC's Agon displays and Philips ones, but you don't see ASUS giving you a calibration report for a gaming monitor. So with this as frankly perfect as it is, that must mean that it's a pretty penny, right? Well, at least for what it is, definitely not. This is retailing, not on sale, retailing for £550. Considering that Evnia is more like 700, this is a steep discount for ostensibly the same thing. A different aesthetic, sure, but the panel, the sort of same gently curved panel, is all the same. And for a QD ultrawide, well, that's an absolute steal. Now obviously there are plenty of you who are watching this for whom this just isn't in your price range, and of course £550 is a lot of money. But if you do have the cash, this is an absolute dream display. If I didn't already have the Evnia, I'd be begging AOC to let me keep this one, and if that didn't work, I'd be saving up my pennies to get my hands on one. I think that's about as high praise as a reviewer can offer. Of course, those are my thoughts, but I would love to hear yours in the comments down below. What do you think of the AG346UCD? Is this your next monitor? Are you going with something else? Is it just not in your price range? Let me know in the comments down below. I will leave a link to it in the description if you're interested, and if you want to check out the tools that I use to test these monitors, like my open source response time tool, head to osrtt.com, and that's linked in the description as well. You can also check out the subscribe button for more videos like this one, hit the bell notification icon to be notified, and check out plenty of other videos on the end cards, including that AG276UCD. I get that mixed up, I said it wrong every time in the video. Check that review out in the cards as well. Otherwise, thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed it, we'll see you on the next video.